Welcome everybody, welcome to another deck profile here on Power Staples. I'm Teecee. Hope you're excited for some Athreos God of Passage EDH. Today's deck profile is actually a reference to Jolt. Jolt539, you probably know him. He makes the greatest videos, he's an awesome player, he plays Magic online. And he came up with the idea of this Church of Athreos deck, which is actually an aristocrat style deck. If you don't know what aristocrats is, you get small utility creatures on the battlefield and then you sacrifice outlets like this Keras here to sacrifice them. And when Blood Artist and Sulapod Cutter are on the field, your opponent loses 1 life whenever a creature you control dies and you gain 1 life that way. And then you can reanimate your crew again from your graveyard and then you can start over doing it again and again. And Athreos effect kind of like does the same thing. So basically this is the main strategy of the Athreos build deck and this is what this is all about. So I hope you have a seat and I hope you sit very well because you can sit in the front, you can sit in the back, you can sit wherever you want. Athreos doesn't care where you sit, but if you sit in the front line, it can be happen that you had sacrificed during today's church service. So let's start over introducing our commander, Athreos God of Passage. For 1 generic, a white and a black mana, he is a legendary enchantment creature god, he's indestructible as most of the gods are, and as long as your devotion to white and black is less than 7, Athreos isn't a creature. And he has a special ability that is very important as a backup plan in this deck. Whenever another creature you own dies, return it to your hand, unless target opponent pays 3 life. So this is very important. Whenever a creature dies, so you sacrifice them all along with cards like Keras here and so on, and then you can return them to your hand, unless your opponent pays 3 life for that. But you cannot really afford it when you're constantly draining your opponent with many other cards like Sulapod Cutter and Blood Artist and so on. So this gets really in the hand. You can get many creatures out, you can get them from your graveyard back to your hand, and you can play out again. Especially a come into playability will come into place. This is very interesting in here, so you can use it all over again. And when your opponent is in a situation that he cannot afford to pay any more amount of life, then you almost get it. And also Athreos is really great as a support card, but only when it is a creature. He can be very fearful, he can attack, he can come in hot, and you will be able to get your devotion going, and then he can attack and block. This is very interesting. You turn to a creature very fast, even in the early turns of the game. So okay, then Athreos can sit there and watch their parishioners, what they're actually doing. Then we have Xio doing the one-eyed. He's actually a really great parishioner. Glad that the church have them. He is for 2 and 2 black for 4 converted mana costs. It's a 3/2 body with horsemanship. And it says you can sacrifice Xio doing the one-eyed. Return target black card from your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only during your turn before attackers are declared. So basically in your main phase 1. This is very interesting because you can take back any black card in your graveyard. This can be any sort of card. Also one that is both black and white, for example. And also a card that's like a sorcery, which you normally wouldn't get. Because you're white and black, you're in all of colors, of course. So this deck does not really have cards like, for example, returning a card from your graveyard to your hand for regrowth on something. You cannot really have them in the deck. So this is very unique. And you can also get the one-eyed back, for example, with Living Death. Or whatever, you could do a card like Patriarch's Bidding. You can return all humans from your graveyard to the battlefield, which also includes the one-eyed himself. You can get him back, and also with cards like Warrior's Stronghold to return him to the top of your deck, and you can play him out and sacrifice him again and whatever. So you can basically get a cycle right there where you can get this card back. Also with Athreos, it's super interesting when he dies and your opponent has to pay 3 life, otherwise you return the one-eyed to your hand and you can do it all over again. So this is basically a creature which has an awesome effect in this deck. You can get whatever you want from your discard pile back to your hand. This is awesome as long as this card is black, of course, and this is a great way to return anything to your hand. Recursion is key also in this deck. Then we have Liliana, Heretic Healer. It's a legendary creature, human cleric first, which will turn to a planeswalker, of course, and she is lifelink. It's 2/3. And whenever another non-token creature you control dies, exile Heretic Healer, then return her to the battlefield transformed under owner's control. If you do, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. And this is very interesting because with your sacrifice outlets, you will be able to trigger this effect very fast, and whenever you want to, you can also dodge like a destruction spell or whatever that could ever target Liliana or whatever, and you can turn that in response whenever you have a sacrifice outlet there and another creature to sacrifice other than Liliana, of course, and then you can transform her on purpose, and this is very powerful. You can get a 2/2 black zombie creature token, for example, to block or whatever, or to sacrifice again if you have a trigger out there like Sulapod Cutter, and then you get this transformed version of Liliana. Let me show you. So if you turn that way, then he has that special ability, 3 special awesome abilities. For example, it comes into play with 3 loyalty, and you can get +2 loyalty, and each player discards a card. Fair enough. And you can -X and then return target non-legendary creature card with converted mana cost X from your graveyard to your battlefield, which is very much. You have many kind of creatures right there in this entire deck, which are not legendary, of course. There are some legendaries in there, but the most of them, of course, they're not legendary. You can get whatever you want. It doesn't matter the color or everything. The converted mana cost is what matters, and then you can return everything back to your graveyard, from your graveyard back to the battlefield. This is very strong. And you also get -8 if you would come this far, I guess. In -8, you get an emblem with whenever a creature dies, return it to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step, which is huge in an Athreos deck. This all sacrifice strategy, it means perfect for this emblem. If you will ever get the chance to reach that, this is very powerful naturally. Then we have Ravos, Soul Tender. He's also great. He's a little bit overcosted, I'd say. For 3, a black and a white mana, so 5 converted mana cost. It's a 2/2 flying creature, and he has a special ability first that every other creature you control gets +1/+1. It's basically some kind of lord effect for every creature you control. And then he has the ability, then during your upkeep, you return a creature card you can target on from your graveyard to your hand, which is also a great way of recursion, because you do not have any other way. It's not a green deck where you can turn everything back to your hand. Eternal Witness, this does not really happen here. So Ravos is great. You can get everything you want back to your hand. For example, like guys like this one, whenever they get discarded or anything. Academy Rector, he's very interesting. We have seen probably with some other kind of decks that I played, especially in Commander. It is a very, very flexible creature that I play in many of my decks. He is for 3 and a white. It's a 1/2 body, which is very puny, but the ability makes up for it. It says whenever Academy Rector is put into a graveyard from play, you will remove him from the game. And if you do, search your library for an enchantment card and put that card into play, then shuffle your library. So basically it's a tutor for any kind of card that is an enchantment. Also probably is an aura or anything. You can get whatever your heart desires. For example, you can get that card like Overwhelming Splendor, which is kind of like the basic key. You can do it all over again because it has very high amount of mana cost. But then you can put him out of your deck, search it out, and put it on the battlefield. For example, attached to target player, because it's a curse that way. So this is very, very strong. You can also get like cards whatever you need. You can get like whatever you need, a Dark Tutelage or whatever your heart desires, you can get it out. Probably a reanimation spell. For example, like Necromancy, you can search whatever you need and put it on the battlefield, which also saves mana that way. So this is a very flexible creature, and keep in mind that you will be able to sacrifice creatures on demand. So Academy Rector won't stand on the battlefield for long. You didn't need to block anything and die that way. You can do it whenever you like. You can trigger that. So this is very interesting in here. You can get him out, for example, with Recruiter of the Guard, which is a very flexible key creature to get any creature you want. The other recruiter is red, of course, so this is the white one, ideal for this deck here. He is for 2 and a white. It's a 1/1 creature with this awesome effect. When Recruiter of the Guard enters the battlefield, you must search your library for a creature card with toughness 2 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So you can get out many, many different kind of cards with this deck. For example, you can tutor for the One-Eyed, or you can tutor for Ravos, or you can tutor for Academy Rector. And for many other cards like your Dark Confident or whatever your heart desires, you can get out anything. And remember, whenever this creature eventually dies, Athreos will trigger, and until your opponent doesn't want to lose 3 life, you can return it to your hand, or you can get it back with a Reanimator spell and whatever. So this can happen all over again. This ability will trigger. Keep in mind that you will not search for one card and then it's gone forever, because you can return the Recruiter of the Guard. With many cards in this deck, for example with Warrior Stronghold and whatever, you can return him back to the battlefield and you can search again, and sometimes many, many times per game. So this is very interesting to have him in here. The church is very proud to have this one with the company, I'd say. Then the next one is a classic, of course. Dark Confident. Always great. Greatness at any cost. This is a classic. Anyone who played ever a round of Modern seems to know this card, of course. It's a Modern staple, no doubt. For 1 in a black, it's a 2/1 creature that during your upkeep, you must reveal the top card of your deck. And if you do, put into your hand, but then you lose an amount of life equal to that card's converted mana cost, the card that you revealed. And of course, then afterwards you get a draw step where you draw 1 card from top of your library. So you get 2 cards instead of 1 every turn you take. So this is basically like a card draw engine. Of course, this will hurt a little bit, but card quality for a little bit of pain is one of the greatest feelings in Magic, I'd say. Jolt will agree me on this. It has a very small mana curve. Most of the cards are very cheap in here. So this is not the problem. There are many lands in this deck, of course. So it won't be much of a problem, I guess. You won't be kind of dying because of this effect, even because your opponent will lose many more life because of the drain effects of the cards you play in here. So this won't be the problem, I'd say. But the card quality makes up for it. It's very, very strong. It's very powerful in Modern. Why shouldn't be bad in here? It's very, very strong. Then we have the Blood Artist, one of the key cards of this deck. For 1 in a black, it's a very puny small vampire with 0 strength and only 1 toughness, but he has the powerful ability: whenever Blood Artist himself or another creature you control dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. This is what I said previously. This is one of the key effects of the deck, that whenever something dies, whenever you sacrifice something, or whenever any player plays a board wipe and whatever, for every single creature on the battlefield you control, this effect will take place, even for himself, and your opponent will get drained away. You lose 1 life for each creature died, also for the Blood Artist himself, I'd say, and then you get many life back. This is like a very great drain engine. Also with tokens and whatever, it doesn't mean only non-token creatures, it counts for every kind of creature. So this is very important to keep in mind, that this is one of the best ways to end the game right there. And also kind of like his twin, Zulaport Cutthroat, is kind of like the same card, except for 1 puny little word in here. It's also for 1 in a black, it's a 1/1, it's a human rogue ally, it doesn't matter, in this deck especially. But very interesting is that whenever Zulaport Cutthroat or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So in a multiplayer game this happens a lot, but in a 1-on-1 it's kind of like the same, except your opponent does not need to be targeted. So if he has, for example, Lane of Sanctity, where he cannot be the target of spells or abilities, or his Hexproof for with any other cards, like Witchbane Orb or whatever, then this card is key, because this effect will take place even if nothing is the target. With other cards like Blood Artist, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So here, no one is the target. Every opponent, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life that way. So this happens anyway. Whatever happens, if your opponent has a pillow fort like that he cannot be targeted, this effect will still happen. So this is very interesting. Also, it's no damage, of course, so it cannot be happen like, for example, your opponent cannot take any damage. This will take place anyway. So this is very, very strong in this deck. Then we have the Falkenrath Noble, a little more pricey for 3 and a black, 4 converted mana cost for a 2/2 flying vampire. And he has the ability as well, whenever Falkenrath Noble or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. But this is interesting. Why is this card so much double price, 4 converted mana cost instead of the others that cost 2? Why is he in here? Because this counts for every creature that dies, not for every creature you control dies. This is very interesting to keep in mind. So if your opponent has a strategy like the same way, he has to sacrifice a bunch of creatures for any reason, for example for an altar or something, he has to sacrifice a lot, or whenever something gets killed from your opponent's side, if he has a lot of 1/1s or something that you can easily destroy by blocking with a couple of 2/2s and 3/3s and whatever. So this, whenever this happens, opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life, even if you're not really in touch with your opponent. Even if he does a lot of stuff with his creature, sacrifices them all and something like that, pays for anything with that, then also this effect happens. So you can get a lot of additional effects by Falkenrath Noble that other cards like Zulaport Cutthroat won't be able to destroy and hit. So this is very strong in here. Then we have the Skills deck High Priest. Oh, this is one of the greatest parishioners in this deck. So glad that the Church of Athreos has this card. This is very awesome. For 1 in a black, he is a 1/2 buddy with this Morbid ability. Morbid is active whenever one creature on the battlefield dies. So this happens a lot in this deck. And whatever you do, if you sacrifice them or whatever, if you destroy something, it also counts whenever a creature on the battlefield dies, not even your own creature. It can also be one of your opponents. If you destroy it, for example, with a destruction spell, like destroy target creature, then this happens, then Morbid is active for the rest of the turn. And then the effect of Skystock High Priest can be affected. It says you can tap him and tap 2 untapped creatures you control. So you tap 3 creatures basically. And then put a 5/5 black demon creature token on the battlefield with flying. This is very powerful. So basically it's kind of like that creature token here, but many other creatures out. For example, like this is a very great card. Not to mention the artwork is like Illidan, doesn't really matter, or something like that. It's a Beardsamon, but interesting in here is that it's a 5/5 flying creature token. This is all what you have to keep in mind if you're going to play this deck. You can get tokens out whatever you like, but this is very strong. Finally, I found a way to get these tokens running and finally get a home for them. Because the Skystock High Priest will be able to get many demons out if you have the time, if this keeps working on. This is a very great clock, and for 2 converted mana cost, this is awesome. Then we have this little poster guy in here. High Priest of Penance. For black and a white, it's a 1/1 human cleric, and whenever High Priest of Penance is dealt damage, you may destroy target non-land permanent. So it's kind of like a Vindicate on a stick. Also great because it's a black card, you can be returned with the 1/1 and anything. And keep in mind, whenever he blocks, for example, and is destroyed, he is dealt damage that way, then you will be able to blow up any permanent on the field. This is very strong if you can get him back continuously from like with Ramos and block every turn, for example. This is huge. You can destroy any target non-land permanent. This is awesome in this deck. And it also has a great artwork, I'd say. Then we have another classic, Sentry Necromancer. For 2 in a black, it's a 2/2 human wizard, and it says whenever Sentry Necromancer himself or another human creature you control dies, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. This is also great because, of course, many of these creatures in this deck are humans. Not everyone, but many of the parishioners are humans, of course, and also clerics. So this functions very well with the entire sacrifice strategy to get a bunch of zombie tokens on the battlefield. Same with Rotlung Reanimator. For 2 in a black, kind of like the same thing. It's a 2/2 creature. And it also says whenever a creature dies, either himself or whenever another cleric dies, it's a cleric himself, a cleric zombie, and whenever another cleric or himself dies, then you get a 2/2 black zombie creature token, kind of like the same idea. It always works that way. Most of the time they are both human clerics, so they both function anywhere. The Sentry Necromancer and the Rockton Reanimator, they are best friends in here to get many zombie tokens on the battlefield. Then there's another classic, Priest of the Bloodrite. It's a 5/5 body creature you can return to the battlefield when it comes into play. So you get another one of these interesting 5/5 creature tokens, whatever you may use, of course. And also he's a 2/2 creature himself. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 2 life. So basically, what you really want to do with him is to get this effect going, come into playability. You want to create that creature demon token, and then afterwards, it's the best idea to sacrifice him or to block with him, put it into the discard pile, so you won't lose that much life with his own ability, and then return him with many ways. For example, with the 1/1 or whatever, to return them to your hand or to the battlefield at best. You can reanimate him, which is also great because you get like 7/7 when you reanimate something, because you get a 5/5 demon and also the 2/2 for blocking or whatever, and you can return him over and over again and get many more demons out. Well, this is actually really good in this deck. Then we have Mr. Thruben, like George once said. Mr. Thruben is actually the Thraben Doomsayer. For 1 and 2 white mana, it's a 2/2 human cleric, and it also has the ability for, you can tap him, and you can put a 1/1 white human creature token into play, okay? So you can jump block and whatever, you can get a great army if no one is attacking you every turn and you have to block any turn. You can create more and more of these tokens, why not? And it also has Fateful Hour. It's a very special ability that says as long as your life total is 5 or less, all creatures you control get +2/+2, and this is a very awesome bonus, especially if you get many tokens out. So this is very powerful. Then all your tokens are 4/4, for example, and all your flying demons are 7/7s. This is very powerful naturally. Even when there are many of the creatures you have in play, many play tiny ones, and then they get huge. This is awesome. Of course, it needs that you're almost dying, of course, but if this happens, that you reach this fateful hour, then the game is almost yours if you can attack, because this bonus is very, very helpful. Helps against so many problematic cards, like for example Elish Norn and something. You can get their power back, and then you can do one very important alpha strike like that. This is very great. Mr. Thruben right there. Then another poster guy, Lunak Mikaeus. This is great for X and a white. He is a 0/0 body at first, but he comes into play, of course, with X +1/+1 counters on him. And you can tap him to put a +1/+1 counter on himself. And you could also alternatively tap him and remove a +1/+1 counter from Mikaeus, and then put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. So this is another way to pump all your guys, your whole army, even if they are really, really small at first. Cards like this can make your whole board explode, and it's very, very strong. To keep in mind that this can be happen too often. Also, when he can return from the battlefield to your hand, you can use this X effect over and over again. This is interesting. Then we have another classic, Fail's Prophet, like a Jesus right there. For 2 and 2 white, it's a 2/2 cleric, and it says whenever he himself is put into a graveyard from play, so basically if he dies, remove all creatures from the game. Okay, the problem is you kind of like want to play and toy around with your graveyard that much. But the good idea is you can use a sacrifice outlet to sacrifice your creatures in response to this effect when it is on the stack, and then everything else your opponent has, because usually he cannot sacrifice in response and does not have that much use like this deck has with that. And then everything is removed from the game, all creatures, and Fail's Prophet died before. He is not removed. He is in the graveyard, or going to the graveyard. And so you can return him back, and everything else and whatever. This is very, very strong. You keep in mind that Athreos needs to be turned off not being a creature before you do it, otherwise it would be removed, of course. But if this not is going to happen, then you're on a very safe side. The thumbs up. And this is a great way, good creature that actually is a removal spell on a stick. Why not? Removing creatures from the game is always nice. Then you have the Eternal Pilgrim, Ailey. This is also a great card. It's most like a staple for this Orzhov style decks. Every kind of Orzhov deck, like Karlov and everything, tends to play this card. Why? Because she is so good. For a black and a white mana, it's a 2/3 body, which is also quite nice. And it has Death Touch. And she has 2 awesome abilities. The first one is you can pay any generic mana and sacrifice another creature. So it's like a sacrifice outlet right there. And you gain life equal to the toughness of the creature you sacrificed. And also you can play 1, a white and a black mana and sacrifice another creature. And you can remove any card that is not a land from the game. This is very strong. You can exile basically every non-land card that is on the battlefield, any permanent, but you can only use that effect because it is so strong, only if you have 10 life more, at least 10 life more than your starting life total. Very, very strong card. Also, if it doesn't really come that way, you can use the last ability. She is also very strong on her own with the first ability as well. Then there's Selfless Spirit, another great way to support your creatures on the battlefield that they may stay on the battlefield, hopefully. Selfless Spirit for 1 and a white. It's a 2/1 flying spirit cleric. And also great is the ability that you can sacrifice the Selfless Spirit himself, and then creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Whenever something plays a mass wipe spell like Wrath of God, you cannot regenerate, but you do not need that. You can sacrifice the spirit if it's on the battlefield, and then every other creature you control is indestructible until end of turn. This is awesome. You can dodge anything with that, and you can do so many things. This is awesome. This is a wonderful card in here. Then the Mummy herself, Mother of Runes, another kind of like staple in so many decks. She's awesome. She's an uncommon. She's wonderful. For 1 white mana, she's a 1/1 human cleric creature, and you can tap her, and target creature you control gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. Of course, this is good. Why could this not be good? This is awesome. Of course. Even if you get her out early, you can protect like every creature, like a destruction spell, for example, give her protection, for example, for red, if there's a lightning bolt coming at one of your creatures, or smaller creatures, for example, or if there's something big and so your opponent plays like destroy target creature, then you can give protection from the color of that spell. This is of course great. Also for blocking, you can also use the Mother of Rules. If she's not sick anymore, you can block with her and then tap herself to give herself protection from the color of the creature you are blocking with. And this is very, very strong, like a Maze of Ithra 1 creature basically. Then we have Weathered Wayfarer. 1 white mana, it's a 1/1 Gnomon Cleric creature, and you can pay 1 white and tap it and search your library for a land card, any land card, reveal it, put it into your hand and shuffle your library, but you play this ability only if an opponent controls more land than you. But as they've seen in Modern right around, this is not that problematic if you have fetch lands, because you can play fetch lands and then use the abilities on the stack. You sacrifice the fetch land, for example, Marsh Flats, you can sacrifice it and pay them out of life, and then you can tutor up for any land that is on the card, printed in there. But in response, you do not have that many lands naturally, because you sacrifice them and this effect that will put a land into play from your deck is still on the stack. And then you can use the Weathered Wayfarer in response, tap 1 white, tap him, and search your deck for any land and put it into your hand. You can get so many lands out. You will see later on in this deck, when you go onto the lands later on, that there are many cards in there, many situations where you need a specific land, and Weathered Wayfarer is able to get each one out of there on purpose. Wonderful. Yeah, then we have our Viscera here. This is one of the easiest ways to sacrifice your own creatures for any kind of great purpose. For 1 black mana, it's 1/1 Vampire. You can sacrifice a creature whenever you want to, and then you have Scry 1. Well, Scry 1 is not really that much of an advantage. It can be, depends on the cards that you're doing on top and if you're trying to put them on the bottom that way. But it's a great way for 1 black mana to get a creature that can sacrifice other creatures for so many reasons. This is very strong, especially with cards out like Blood Artist. You know what I'm doing. And this is very strong as the combination that this Aristocrat's deck is going through. This is wonderful in here. And he has many twins, of course. Bloodthrone Vampire is also great because I like the artwork. It's very wonderful, I say. For 1 and a black, 2 converted mana cost, it's a 1/1 Vampire, and she has the ability to sacrifice a creature, and Bloodthrone Vampire gets +2/+2 until end of turn. At last, she can do a little bit of Alpha Swing. She can come in hot, and then you can sacrifice a bunch of creatures if you so desire, if it needs to be. This is very strong. Otherwise, she's doing the same thing like many other cards. Like, for example, the Viscera here does the same thing. She is a sacrifice outlet right there. Always good to have. Then Cartel Aristocrat. Also the same thing. It's an Aristocrat's deck. So Cartel Aristocrat needs to be here. Also awesome artwork, let's say. For 1 white and a black mana, it's 2/2 creature. And she has also the ability you can sacrifice another creature. And if you do, then she gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. Otherwise, it's a sacrifice outlet, no matter what else is going to combine with that. Then we have Corpse Augur. He's the one that is very powerful in this deck because there are many creatures dying and many cards are in your graveyard. And for 3 and a black, for 4 converted mana cost, it's a 4/2 zombie wizard. And whenever he dies, you draw X cards and you lose X life, where X is the number of creature cards in target player's graveyard. So of course your graveyard should be so full of creatures sooner or later. You can want to return them all back naturally, but you can also sacrifice them in the same way if you need to, if you want to, whatever, if your opponent gets around that or something. And otherwise, if your graveyard is not really that full, you can always decide that your opponent's graveyard is counting for the amount of creatures. Sometimes an opponent playing a lot of cards, for example like Mimeoplasm or Marin or anything, where many creatures are in their graveyard, and then you can use their amount of creature cards in their graveyard and draw that many cards and lose that many life. So you can decide what you want to do. Do you want to draw a bunch of cards, like 12 or something, or for example you do not really want to do that, you want to draw only 3. This can, depending on your decision. So this is very good in this deck. You can sacrifice him on purpose as well. Very strong. Then we have the Twilight Prophet, one of the newer cards from Rebels of Ixalan. It's like the Greater Dark Confident, I'd say. For 2 and 2 black, 4 converted mana cost. You get a vampire cleric with 2 attack and 4 toughness. She has flying, and she has this super special ability that as long as there are 10 or more permanents on the battlefield with her Ascent ability, then you get the city's blessing. If you once have that, you cannot lose it, okay? And during your upkeep, if you have the city's blessing, you can reveal the top card of your deck and put it into your hand, and your opponent loses life equal to the converted mana cost of the card you revealed, and you gain the same amount of life. So this is very, very great. You're draining your opponent and drawing cards the same way. Also, it provides you from losing life to other cards like Phyrexian Arena or something. You can draw cards and drain your opponent almost for free if you once reach the city's blessing and have this profit out. This is very, very strong. Also in vampire decks, kind of like a staple, I'd say. Very new from Universe of Exile, but this is awesome. This is a wonderful card. Then we have the Bygone Bishop, also a staple in any kind of spirit deck. For example, I have a deck in Frontier, it's spirit, check it out on my channel. This is one of the main cards in there. For 2 and a white, it's also a cleric spirit. It's 3 toughness and 2 power. He's flying, of course. Not all, but many spirits tend to have flying on there. And whenever you cast a creature spell with converted mana cost 3 or less, so a small creature spell, then you investigate. You put a colorless clue artifact creature token onto the battlefield, but you can sacrifice it when you play 2 mana of any color, 2 generic mana. You can sacrifice that artifact, that clue, and you can draw a card. This is very interesting because you will be able to get many creature cards out. Many of these cards entirely in this deck have many small creatures with very low converted mana cost, like 2 or 3. You've seen enough of them. Some of them are even more coming. So this is very powerful. You will get many clue tokens, and whenever you kind of like legs punch, if you do not know what to do, if you've drawn another land or 3 lands in the last 2 turns, then this card can really help you stabilize with card draw. So this is important. So sooner or later we'll be able to have 3 or 4 of these clue tokens hanging around, and then you can crack them to draw a bunch of more cards and keep returning going on. This is very good in this deck, trust me, he's wonderful. Then there's little Fiend Hunter. For 1 and 2 white is a 1/3 creature, human cleric. And the good thing is that when he enters the battlefield, you may exile another target creature. So first it's like a removal spell. And then it says, when Fiend Hunter leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So why this is good? It's good if you have a sacrifice outlet there, which sooner or later they should be able to have here. You should be able to get like a Viscaras here out very fast. And if you have him and then play the Fiend Hunter and you have a big target of creature that you want to get removed, then you can target him. You can target the creature your opponent has that you want to get rid of. And then afterwards, when this effect is on the stack, the first effect, then you can sacrifice the Fiend Hunter in response because it's a creature on the battlefield you control. Nothing wrong with that. And then the other ability goes on this deck. When he leaves the battlefield, the card will return. And then you can stack it that way, that first the ability will resolve, that opponent will get the card back, but there's nothing else on that timing that is removed, because the remove ability is still on the stack and not resolving. So first your opponent gets the card back, nothing there. And then something is removed from the game. And then your opponent will never be able to return that card back because Fiend Hunter is no longer on the battlefield and the effect already took place. So this, in that combination, if you have a sacrifice outlet, then you won't be able to get the cards back. So this is also a removal spell on a creature, on a stick. Very strong if you have a sacrifice outlet. And if not, he's kind of like a Bolivian ring in a creature, 4 creatures. At least that is what's going to happen. Then we have Devote Chaplain, a great way to get rid of artifacts and enchantments. The deck needs some sort of these cards, I'd say. For 2 and a white is a 2/2 human cleric, and you can tap her and tap 2 untapped humans you control. then exile target artifact or enchantment. Also the great word exile. Do not destroy them. Many cards are indestructible nowadays. So it's very, very important to say that they are removed. Also when your opponent is doing the thing like an Athreos player would do, have a god as a commander, then you can also target and remove them. Of course you can return them to the command zone, but they will be able to get around that. Indestructible is not the problem. The Devoted Chaplain can remove anything, any artifact and any enchantment you target for, and tapping these creatures is not really a problem, as you get many tokens, many creatures they are not able to attack or do not want to attack sooner or later because they're very puny, and then you can get this effect going. And this is very, very strong. When your opponent cannot do anything about it, this is a tap effect and not a spell. So your opponent is very, very confused if you're getting around about his counter spells or something. This is a wonderful card and you will be able to get many, many cards out of the way with that. Then there's Pawn of Ulamog, and also a great way to get smaller creatures out than you can sacrifice, because you need a little bit of an army to sacrifice many, many creatures. Even if you have the ability to get rid of your opponent, this is very, very strong to drain her pound of life with cards like Zulaport Cutthroat and also Athreos' ability himself. So Pawn of Ulamog says for 1 and 2 black, so 2/2 Vampire Shaman, and whenever Ulamog himself or another creature you control is put to a graveyard, so it dies, you may put a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token onto the battlefield, and this card has, you can sacrifice that creature and add 1 generic mana to your mana pool. This is interesting because you will be able to find ways that you get many, many creatures out to sacrifice. And also you can produce mana if you need to. For example, if it requires that Athreos comes back and is shot to the command zone like 2 or 3 times again, so this gets really high on tax, but then you can pay the amount of mana, sacrificing these creatures for mana, so you do not even require a specific amount of removal spell or something. You do not even need a sacrifice outlet, so you just simply sacrifice the creature because of its own ability to generate 1 mana, and then you can trigger like Zulaport Cutthroat and whatever, and then also provide you with mana to play other spells and pay amount of costs and whatever. So this gets really, really strong. And it also works if Pawn of Ulamog himself dies on the battlefield. Then we have Hallowed Spirit Keeper. For 1 and 2 white, it's a 3/2 body, it's an avatar, he has vigilance, why not? And whenever he dies, you put X 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying onto the battlefield, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So this also, it's very, very strong. That's Corpse Augur, same thing. You have many creatures in your graveyard naturally sooner or later because you sacrifice them and whatever. And then you will be able to get many 1/1s out with flying. Why not? And you can also return him, for example, with a Reanimator spell or something. Make him die again, get a bunch of more tokens. This is very strong to go wide. Then we have the Karmic Guide, another classic. It's a staple in many kind of decks. For 5 converted mana cost actually, for 3 and 2 white. It's a 2/2 Angel Spirit. He has flying and protection from black. Very nice. It has echo costs. So during your next upkeep, you have to pay another 5 mana, or you sacrifice the Karmic Guide. Actually, sacrificing him is not the problem, because you do not really need a 2/2 flying body unless opponent has only a creature with flying out, for example, or nothing big and hit is kind of black. Then you want to be able to chunk on this. But otherwise, it's not the problem. You don't need that Karmic Guide. You're better off having him in the graveyard for many reasons. And when Karmic Guide enters the battlefield, that's the good part of this card, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Like forever, there's no clue on that. You can get any creature out and it leaves there until the opponent does something else and whatever happens. But this is not required to, whenever Karmic Guide dies, this card also is returned. No, it stays on the battlefield. This is awesome. Also with another combination, you've seen it in many other of my deck profiles, combination with Revelark. Revelark is an hilarious creature, I'd say. This art. For a 5 converted mana cost, 4 and a white, it's a 4/3 flying body, an elemental. When he is on the battlefield and then he leaves the battlefield, you can return up to 2 creature cards you control from your graveyard with strength 2 or less, and to put them into play. So this is strong. For example, with Karmic Guide, you can choose him because he has toughness and power equals to 2 each. And then you can target, for example, Karmic Guide and put him into play. And then with this trigger of the Karmic Guide, you can return, like that leave the battlefield, that Revelark all into play again. And this is a very great loop combination. You can get another creature out, and this is strings the same way. And then you can return them all over again, so you always have a great battlefield, even if anything dies or everything dies. This is a strong combination. And you also can evoke the Revelark, but that's not really that much interesting, because you pay 1 more mana to do it, and then it comes into play, and then it leaves the battlefield because it dies afterwards. You have to sacrifice him after it enters the battlefield. This can be an option, but optionally it's better off you sacrifice him and doing the same thing over again. So this does not really be the case in here. Then we have Dark Supplicant. He's wonderful, one of the greatest artworks I've ever seen. Jolt always says this is wonderful artwork, and I agree, this artwork is wonderful. And it says for 1 black mana, only 1 mana required for a 1/1 cleric, and you can tap him and sacrifice 3 clerics, one of them could be him. Sacrifice 3 clerics, and then search your graveyard, hand, and or library for a card named Scion of Darkness and put it into play. If you do, shuffle your library afterwards. So this is awesome. It's like a tutor for Scion of Darkness. You do not need to get him anywhere else. If he is in the graveyard, in the hand, whatever, in your entire library, as long as he's not removed from the game, it's not in exile, you can put him into play if you sacrifice 3 clerics and tap the Dark Supplicant. So this is very strong, and here it is. Here's Scion of Darkness. It's a 6/6 creature for a great heavy amount of mana cost, but he is totally worth it. He is so awesome. He has trample, and he says whenever he attacks, it deals combat damage to the player. Then you can choose any creature in your opponent's graveyard and put that creature card into play under your control. So he steals creatures. He is awesome. He's wonderful. He's one of the greatest demons in this deck. Athreos is so proud that you have him. And then we have Overseer of the Damned, another great demon in this deck. For 7 converted mana cost, which is also huge, we have a 5/5 demon with flying, and when Overseer of the Damned enters the battlefield, you may destroy target creature. This is also interesting if you can get him on the battlefield from your graveyard, for example, with an instant card. Then you can destroy a creature on purpose, like on reaction to something. This is very strong. For example, like with Necromancy and anything. Then this happens to be a destruction spell, like an instant from your hand, basically, and you also get a 5/5 flying demon creature. And whenever a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield tapped. This is also great. This happens a lot when everything on the field is destroyed. Then also this effect will take place. This is strong in that situation. Then we have Razakhet, the Full-Blooded, one of the biggest creatures in competitive EDH. Always great for a converted mana cost of 8. It's an 8/8 body, flying trample, legendary demon, and you can pay 2 life and sacrifice another creature. Then search your library for a card and put that card into your hand and shuffle your library. So basically he's another search on a stick, another tutor, for example. This is very strong. It's a sacrifice outlet, and he also is very strong. Flying trample 8/8. It's a force to be reckoned with. Razakhet is so strong, and he also will be able to search you up for your cards that you need to protect him or keep going. Very, very strong if you have him. And then you have Harvester of Souls. I wanted to put him in here because his effect takes place so often in this deck. For converted mana cost 6, it's a 5/5 demon with Dead Touch and not flying. And he says whenever another non-token creature dies, you may draw a card. So this is very powerful because many creatures are going to die in this deck. You sacrifice a lot of your creatures, and as long as it's not a token you sacrifice, you may start drawing cards with this. And this is very, very strong because you filter up, you can draw many cards, you do not miss your land drops because you have a bunch of cards in your hand. This is strong. Opponent needs to get rid of this Harvester of Souls as soon as possible. Otherwise, you just have too much options, and options are always good for the Athreos deck, I'd say. Then we are up with the other cards. They are not creatures in this deck and not planeswalkers. Then we have Demonic Tutor. Yeah, it's the staple of the black staple cards, I'd say. Nothing wrong with that. For 1 and a black, you can tutor up like a sorcery, search your deck for any card and put it into your hand. Opponent does not know what it is. You don't need to reveal that card naturally. This is strong. You can get any card you want. Why could this be bad in any kind of situation? This is always great having a card and tutor it up for. Then Vampiric Tutor, the same thing. Also great. For 1 black mana, it's an instant. And you can search your deck for a card, shuffle your library, then put that card on top of your library, and you lose 2 life. So it requires the bite of a vampire or something, but then you can get any card you want as an instant. You can also play it after you untap, before you draw, so you can get the card as well as the next phase. So this is very, very strong. Get the cards you want, the best top deck in the entire game right there. So this is an awesome tutor, hands down. Needs to be played if you have it. Then the Imperial Seal. Oh, I love this card. This is awesome. For 1 black, it's basically like Vampiric Tutor, except this is a sorcery. You search your library for a card and shuffle your library and put that card on top of your library and you lose 2 life. So this is like Vampiric Tutor. But the main thing is that this cannot happen that you have more than 1 Vampiric Tutor in your deck, of course. So Imperial Seal functions very well, especially in Commander and EDH. Very, very strong to have another of these card effects on that. So you can either draw this or that one, and then you will be able to get the card you seek. Wonderful. Then we have Cruel Tutor. For 2 and a black mana, you can search your deck for any card, shuffle your deck, and put that card on top of it. You lose 2 life. So another great way to get the top deck you really, really need to have to. This is important, and you can get every card out you need. So this is powerful. Tutoring up for cards is what this deck is all about. And another tutor card, Diabolic Intent. For 1 and a black, as an additional cost to play Diabolic Intent, sacrifice a creature, and you search your library for a card and put that card into your hand and shuffle your library. So it's another tutor card and also a great way to sacrifice on purpose, even if it's just 1-time sacrifice, but it's also great. And keep in mind that also tutors like this can be put out with the one-eyed if you need to. This is also a great way. A black card is a black card. So this can also come in handy real often. Then there's one of the cards you're kind of like searching for. You tend to find a lot of times. Buried Alive. For 2 and a black mana, for 3 converted mana cost, is a sorcery that says search your library for up to 3 creature cards and put them into your graveyard. Then shuffle your library. This is awesome in so many EDH decks. Any deck plays that, like Kalia and whatever. Many decks tend to have this card in the deck. This is awesome. You can get any 3 creature cards you like out and put it into your graveyard. So you can dig them out later, you can reanimate them, you can do many more things with them in the graveyard. This is very powerful. It's a black card, and actually it's a white and black deck, so you do not get cards like Anger or Wonder, of course. This is not possible in this combination, but other ways, this is very, very great. One of the greatest cards you can tutor for, because this is also a tutor, but a tutor that makes your entire situation go on. If you have, for example, a great reanimation spell like Patriarch's Bidding and do not have enough creatures in your graveyard, this is what you're going for. Wonderful card. Then the greatest of reanimation spells ever in EDH forever, I'd say. It's Living Death. It's the classic of all classics. For 3 and 2 black, 5 converted mana cost, a sorcery that says that everything that's on a battlefield dies, and everything that is in the graveyard is put into play, comes to life forever. So this is very, very important. So you can swap kind of like the entire board state of both players, and most commonly in your favor. So everything dies. It's kind of like a board wipe. If your opponent has the best creatures out with many tokens on them or something, or many +1/+1 counters and whatever. And the other good situation right there is you can get everything from your graveyard, as long as it's a creature, on the battlefield with this one spell. This is very, very strong, especially if you did many cards to dig into your graveyard like Buried Alive. You can fill your graveyard and then put them all out. This is wonderful. Then we have the Patriarch's Bidding, another great card that works kind of like the same thing. Oh, this artwork is perfectly for the Church of Athreos, I guess. For 3 and 2 black, it's a sorcery that says whenever this is played, each player chooses a creature type. Then each player returns all creature cards of the chosen type this way into his or your graveyard into play. So we have a bunch of creatures there. They are all clerics. Most of them are clerics, and most of them are also humans. So this is not a problem, eaching one of those, and then get out many creatures. Not everything in your graveyard, there are some exceptions, but many of the creatures you want to, you can put out at once. This is strong. Well, probably your opponent has kind of like many creatures that are from the same type. For example, like elves and something. You need to be a little bit careful with this card, but you see what your opponent is capable of in his graveyard, and then you can count on, is this a good idea or not? And if it's a good idea, play this card, win with this card. So this is what this deck wants. Getting all creatures out of the graveyard is wonderful. Then we have Rally the Ancestors. For X and 2 white, it's an instant that says return each creature card with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And they're exiled at the beginning of the next end step, though the problem is you need to sacrifice them to use that effect properly, otherwise they will be ending in exile. This is not a great idea. Very strong. And then we have Wake the Dead. For X and 2 black, you can pay X. You can play this card only during combat on an opponent's turn. So opponent has to go to his combat step and attack you with anything. Then you can play this card. You can pay X and 2 black and return X target creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield and sacrifice those creatures at the beginning of the next end step. Sacrificing is not that bad as, for example, removing them would be, of course. You can chump block anything that comes your way and then also use them to sacrifice. And then, for example, like all the effects like Sulaport Cutthroat will happen and your opponent will be drained away for so many life points. This is hilarious. And you also get many life back because your opponent loses that much life and you gain more life for each trigger that will occur. Very good. Then we have the single spot reanimation cards. Reanimate, of course, the classic. For 1 black, it's a sorcery. You put target creature card from a graveyard, and it's a graveyard, not only your graveyard. Can be your opponent's if you need to, if you like to, if you find anything useful there. From any graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, and you lose life equal to its converted mana cost. So as long as you're not super greedy and getting something that costs 10 or something, you're safe. You can lose a bunch of life. You are safe because you get many life back from all these triggers and for all this lifelink and so on. So you do not need to get picky on the spot if you have 30 life, but it's kind of problematic if you pay 9 or something, then problematically it could be ruin your day if your opponent is trying to attack you with anything and you're going low on life. But this is a great card. For 1 black, it saves mana like that. You kind of pay with your life, you have to pay and not for your mana. So this is very great. I love this card in many decks, of course. Then we have the Animate Dead. For 1 and a black, it's an enchantment that says you can return a creature card from a graveyard and also a graveyard, any kind of player's graveyard, to the battlefield under your control, and that creature gets a little disadvantage, gets -1, -0, that's not the problem. And whenever one of them dies, either the creature you reanimate or the card himself, the enchantment, either one of them is destroyed or something, leaves the battlefield, then the other card is also destroyed. So the problem is here, if for example your opponent has a disenchant, you can get rid of this creature and vice versa. This is very problematic at once, but as long as opponent does not have that, this card is great to returning any creature from the battlefield back. And if something dies that way, then the creature goes to the graveyard. So with cards like the One-Eyed, you can return even that card back because it's a black card, and then you can start over reanimating again. So this is kind of wonderful in here. Then we have Victimize, also great because you have so many zombie tokens and something. Victimize says for 2 and a black, you can choose 2 target creature cards in your graveyard, sacrifice a creature. If you do, return the chosen cards to the battlefield tapped. So you get 2 creatures for the price of 1, which is always good. They are coming to play tapped, but this doesn't really be a problem because normally you do not really want to block with them or something. So this is not very problematic. And the good idea is you can sacrifice something like a token or something that wants to be sacrificed as a sacrifice outlet. And this is not a cost. If Victimize is countered, then you do not need to sacrifice anything. So this is great, returning 1 card back and another one is 2 cards for 1. So this is always a good idea, I'd say. Also the great artwork here. Then there's Dusk and Dawn, from dusk till dawn, of course. For 2 and 2 white, you can first destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater. This is not a problem because Athreos is indestructible, and many of your parishioners are very puny, I'd say, because that's not really the problem if they have power 2 or less, and even if one of them is destroyed, that's not the thing, as long as your opponent has a bunch of creatures with higher power, of course. And then you can use the Aftermath ability. When this card is in the graveyard, you can pay Dawn. You can pay 3 and 2 white, and then return all creature cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. So this is also great, because many cards are very small, like the Blood Art is a 0/1 for example, and you can get many cards out that way. So this is both a removal package, and afterwards also with this Aftermath effect also works great as a mass reanimator spell in the same way. Both cards like into one card. Why not playing this? This is awesome. Then we have the Damnation, another great classic card. It's the Wrath of God in black. You can also play Wrath of God, whatever, but Damnation is, yes, it's a staple. It's wonderful to have him in here. For 2 and 2 black, you can destroy all creatures, and those creatures cannot be regenerated this turn. Why not? It's a sorcery, it's powerful, destroys everything, and it also works great with all these creatures out, like Zulaport Cutthroat and anything, and Blood Artist, and the Noble and whatever, and all the creatures die, these effects will still happen, even if they're not sacrificed. This is also a great way for the creatures to die, and then it will drain your opponent and you will get that life back, even if there's nothing there to sacrifice. Only a destruction spell that works the same way. It's a great way to tutor up for, and then you can destroy the world. Very, very strong. Get rid of any board state in form of creatures. Also, Bontu's Last Reckoning for 1 and 2 black. Also the same thing, destroy all creatures. The problem behind here is, it's not really problematic, but you have to keep in mind that all lands don't untap. So keep in mind it's very strong because it costs only 3 converted mana cost and not 4 like most of the other spells that destroy everything like creatures on the battlefield. But the main problem here is you do not need to be untapped. This is not nice if you're going to be completely out-tapped, and then the problem is that you cannot untap. But otherwise, this is not the problem. It's a great way. For example, it's a cheap card, and you will be able to destroy a bunch of creatures and put out all these effects. All these effects will trigger with Zulaport Cutthroat and so on. So this is kind of like very nasty for your opponent. Great to have him in here. But if you do not want to play that, it's not that much of a problem. Then we have Vindicate. It's kind of like an all-star. It's removal for everything. For 1, a white and a black, it's a sorcery that says destroy target permanent, which also includes lands. For example, there are many lands that you do not want to see. For example, a Maze of Ith that untaps and puts out of combat Athreos all the time, for example. This is not very friendly. And then, for example, Vindicate is wonderful. You can destroy any permanent that you can target. Very, very strong. Not need to say more. Very great, like a staple in an Orzhov deck. Then we have Swords to Plowshares. Always good. Another kind of like staple when it comes to removal. For 1 white, exile target creature at controller gains life equal to its power. You can also put it on a creature you control himself, and then you can get a bunch of life if you really need to. Otherwise, it's removal for opponent's creature, of course. For 1 white, instant, perfect. Neither to say more. Then we have Oblivion Ring. For 2 and a white, it's an enchantment that comes into play, and when it comes into play, any non-land permanent, you can target it and remove it from the game. And afterwards, when Oblivion Ring leaves the battlefield, this card comes back. So this is not a creature, you cannot sacrifice him and do the same way like Fiend Hunter is played around. But this is also good as a removal, multi-tool removal for anything that is not a land, and you can get out so many problematics with that. Whatever is blocking your way, you can get around that. So this is a utility card right there. Then we have a little bit of card draw enchantments, I'd say. Phyrexian Arena is also a great way to do this. Many people play that, of course. For 1 and 2 black, it's an enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. That's simple. Then you draw another card in your draw step, so you get 2 cards, like Dark Confident and the Twilight Prophet, the same thing. They do not have to pay that much life, because only 1 life per card. This is a deal. So this is kind of like an auto-include here. Also Dark Tutelage. Also the same thing, this enchantment for 2 and a black says, during your upkeep, you reveal the top card of your deck, put it into your hand, and you lose life equal to its converted mana cost. So this is the enchantment that's the same thing, the same functionality as the same thing that Dark Confidant is doing. So basically it's Dark Confidant as an enchantment, also important here in this deck because you need many cards, and greatness at any cost, also here very good. The deck needs the power, of course. Then this is another great card, Profane Procession. I love this artwork. This is awesome with Athreos all together. This is kind of like the Church of Athreos right there. Awesome artwork, I love it. For 1, a white and a black mana, it's a legendary enchantment that says you can pay 5 mana, 3 generic of any color, then 1 white and 1 black. And then you remove a creature from the game, you exile any target creature, and then if there are 3 or more cards exiled with that possession, then you return it and transform it, and then you will be rewarded with that special card. Then you return like this. This is very strong. It's a legendary land that says you can tap it for 1 mana of any color, okay? And for 2, a black and a white mana, and tap this land, then return a creature that was exiled with this card in your own control. This is very strong. So you get any creature that you remove from the game back with this effect. Wonderful card, and I love the artwork. Then we have land tax. This is also kind of classic in this deck, of course. For 1 white mana, it's an enchantment that says whenever an opponent has more lands than you during your upkeep, you search your deck for 3 basic lands and you put them into your hand. Then shuffle your deck, and then you draw another card in your draw step, of course. So this is interesting because you can get many lands out, so you do not have a problem having many land drops. And the good idea behind that is you can shuffle your deck as well. Either way, any kind of deck needs that as long as they're playing basic lands, more than 3 or something. Then we have Enlightened Tutor. Also great, for 1 white mana, it's an instant, search your deck for an artifact or enchantment card, put that card on top of your library, and before that you shuffle and then put it on top of your library, of course. So this is also a great tutor, kind of like all the other tutors. This is awesome, you can get whatever you seek, especially for artifacts and also for all the other enchantments. It's a wonderful way to dig them out and put it on top of your library that way. Then we have Tithe. For 1 white mana, it's kind of like the same thing, for example, as that land tax is doing. It's a smaller land tax, I'd say. For an instant, for 1 white, you search your library for a plains card. If you control fewer lands than target opponent, you must search your library for an additional plains card. So you can get 2 land cards, and afterwards you shuffle your library. 2 plains is also great because it can also include cards like Godless Shrine and Scrubland. You do not even need to get a basic plains out. You do not have to do that. You can also get any card that is a plains. You can get out whatever you need, and then you can start over and build a board, have many lands out. Very great, so you do not have mana problems. And this card is awesome. I got this for a bunch of bucks. This is wonderful in this deck. This needs to be a staple in Athreos decks. Please, Jolt, please, if you see this video, please do Lifeline in your deck. Please test it out. It's so great. I can only say that this is awesome in this deck. For 5 mana, it's an artifact that says whenever a creature is put into a graveyard and a creature is in play, return that creature from your graveyard to play at end of turn. So this is wonderful, as long as there's a creature on the battlefield. Whenever you sacrifice them with one of your sacrifice outlets, sacrifice any situational creature you do not want or whatever, you sacrifice them, and then they come back because of Lifeline, as long as there's a creature there. For example, like Recruiter of the Guard and cards that have great abilities, and then we return back from your graveyard at end of turn. You can get anything out. This deck needs this Lifeline. Also, the artwork is Church of Athreos like. This is wonderful. Please, Jolt, please put the Lifeline in your deck. Please try it out. I think this is great. Please tell me what you think about the Lifeline. Then we have Cauldron of Souls. This is also important to have in mind. For 5 mana, it's an artifact that says you can tap it, choose any number of target creatures. Each of those creatures gains persist until end of turn. So this means when the creature die and they have not any counters on them, like -1 counters on them, they return to the battlefield and then they get a -1/-1 counter put on them. They resume him having persist for the rest of the turn, but then persist won't happen again, for example, if they have this counter on. Then you can put the Lunarch and tap him, and you can put one +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. And then this will be a very great synergy, because then we remain having persist all creatures you control. And this is another great combination. So otherwise it still happens that even if the creatures are going to die, then first they come into play. And for example, Recruiter of the Guard will search your library for another creature card, put it into your hand and something. Then this all effects happen. And if they die due to the persist trigger and due to the -1 toughness and they die, that's not the end of the world, because that can happen, that all these effects trigger. For example, as long as many other cards are out there. For example, like Blood Artist is not one of the creatures that died and come back with the persist trigger. But also here it is wonderful, I'd say. Great. Then we have the Ashnod's Altar. Of course, this is an awesome card. It's an artifact for 3 that says you can sacrifice a creature, add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. You can sacrifice cards you need to get back from your graveyard, needs to get sacrifice cards that need to be sacrificed, and also you can sacrifice creatures not only to get mana, but also like cards like many zombie tokens you do not really need, and you get mana out of them and sacrifice them. So this sacrifice outlet on Ashnod's Altar is actually a very good one, because it can provide you with colorless mana and be a sacrifice outlet right there. Very strong. Opponent has to get rid of that, otherwise you will be able to have a bunch of mana and do a lot of nasty things to your opponent, and we really want that. Athreos will be pleased if this happens in your favor. Wonderful. Then of course we have Mana Crypt, of course. This one is also great. You can tap it, it's a 0 artifact, you can pay 0 and put it into play then. And then you can tap it and get 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. But it has a little bit of a downside. During your upkeep you have to flip a coin. And if the coin is not adding up in your favor, then this Mana Crypt deals 3 damage to you. So you probably get in the Rage of Fateful Hour that way, like Jolt once did. This is very awesome if that happens. Otherwise you simply name Tails. Tails never fails, so you probably always name Tails on this one, because that's an awesome way to get this all into motion. Then we have a Sol Ring, staple, not need to say more. Artifact for 1, tap for 2, colorless. Wonderful, needs to be played in any deck where it's allowed to be played. And then we're here on the lands that we have. Where we have Phyrexian Tower. It's a legendary land. You get 1 colorless mana when you tap it. Also you can tap it and sacrifice a creature. So another sacrifice outlet on a land. And then you will be rewarded with 2 black mana into your mana pool. Why not? It's good. Then we have the High Market. Another way to sacrifice creatures. Can put for 1 colorless and also tap it and sacrifice a creature. Another sacrifice outlet right there. And then you gain 1 life. Why not? Sometimes you really need to get that life really fast, and this is a way to do it. It taps for it, so you can only do it once per turn, I guess, but actually this is awesome to get sacrificing on the stick right there. Then we have one of the greatest lands in the entire deck, Volrath's Stronghold. Oh, I love this card. This is wonderful. Legendary land, taps 1 colorless, and also you can alternatively pay 1 generic and a black mana. And tap it, and you put target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. For example, the One-Eyed, or Recruiter of the Guard, or whatever your heart desires. You can get out any creature from your graveyard, as long as you can target them, and put them on top of your deck, so you can draw into them. This is also why there are many cards in the deck, even with all these tutors like Imperial Seal, Empiric Tutor and so on, and also Enlightened Tutor. So this is why you need to get your card draw going, otherwise you will be in very much a disadvantage. You can get the cards to seek, but your hand is not refilling that much. So you need cards like Phyrexian Arena and something, and Twilight Prophet and Dark Confident and anything to get the card draw going, because most of the time you know what's on top of your deck because you put it right there. And this is also a great way to do this. Volrath's Stronghold is awesome. You can draw all the cards, and then when the creature died you can return them back to top of your deck. Especially like the One-Eyed or Liliana or something. This is a great combination that is too strong not to play this land. This is one of the greatest lands right there. And Weathered Wayfarer, again, get that out for sure. Then, of course, we have the Ancient Tomb. Actually, this is also a wonderful land, a great target for Weathered Wayfarer to get. It's a land that taps for 2 colorless mana into your mana pool, and then Ancient Tomb deals 2 damage to you. This is not the thing in this deck. You can get life back, and also it's a resource. You need to do this as often as possible. This is wonderful to have. Starting with this in your opening hand is wonderful. You need to have this card. Awesome, trust me. Then Temple of the Failed God. This is kind of like, I'm really not sure about this card in this special deck here. There are many cards like Omnath, then you have a bunch of lands, then it's not problematic. And in this deck you need cards like Land Tax, for example, to keep this working. It says you can tap it for 2 colorless mana to your mana pool, but you can use the ability only if you control 5 or more lands. Well, Temple of the Failed God is one of them, so you need 4 other lands to get this ability going. Otherwise, this land does nothing. It does not provide you with any mana. So it's really a bit of a bummer. It's really a problematic card in here. I don't know if I should keep it in this deck, but it is so strong if this keeps working that way. And otherwise, if you lack on mana, for example, you get out like cards like, for example, Phyrexian Altar, or the tokens you can get out with Pawn of Ulamog and something to get a little bit amount of mana. For example, to get this time over, and sooner or later we will be able to get another land and then keep going from there. So this is not really the problem, but I'm not really sure if it's good in this deck because you do not get that really much of a land drops here. Then we have an awesome card for this deck, Crypt of Agadim. It comes into play tapped. That's not the problem. You can tap for 1 black. Also, you can pay 2 alternatively and tap it, and then you get 1 black mana to your mana pool for each black creature card in your graveyard. And this is actually a lot of cards in your graveyard. Not all of the creatures are black, of course not, but if it's more than 3, then it's going to be an advantage of mana. Then you will be up against, like, for example, if there are 8 cards in your graveyard that are black creatures, and you get many mana out of this 1 land, this is also a good idea. This is awesome in this deck, I guess. Then we have the West Vale Abbey. This is an awesome land. It's like the church of Athreos, the church for Athreos. This is awesome. You can tap it for 1 colorless mana if you want to, and you could also pay 5 mana of any color and tap it, and pay 1 life, and you put in 1/1 black and white human cleric creature token onto the battlefield. If you really need to, I'd say this is not the best of all the moves in here, but the idea makes up for it. If you pay 5 and tap it, it's the last ability of this land. It has 3 abilities, if you count the mana ability with it, and tap it and sacrifice 5 creatures, for example, all the tokens. And if you do, you transform this land, and then it becomes another creature, another beatstick demon. And this is Olmendal, Unholy Prince. This is awesome. It's a 9/7 creature. It has flying, lifelink, indestructible, and haste. So it can attack directly. It has lifelink, it is flying. This is awesome. And the indestructibility is also a great tool if ever, yes, opponent will have a hard time blocking it all day and cannot really destroy it. It needs to be sacrificed or something, or it needs to be removed from the game. And as long as you have then another way to kind of like go around that, this is awesome. This is like a game ender, the demon that the Athreos decks want. Then we have the Starlight Sanctum, another great land, taps for a colorless, and also you can pay 1 white alternatively and tap this land and sacrifice a cleric, and you get life points equal to the number of the toughness of the cleric creature you sacrifice that way. And you can also pay 1 black mana and tap this land, and then sacrifice a cleric. Target player you target for loses 1 life equal to the number of the power that creature had. So basically you can drain your opponent that way. It's like a finishing blow on a land. Why not? This is good, I guess. Wonderful artwork here also. This deck leads it. Then we have Windbrisk Heights. It's a land with Hideaway, comes into play tapped, and then you put the top 4 cards. You will have to look at the top 4 cards of your library and choose any 1 card of them that's not a land, and then put it onto that card, onto the Windbrisk Heights, and then you can pay 1 white and tap it. You may play the removed card without paying its mana cost if you attacked with 3 or more creatures this turn. This can happen. This is possible in this deck. Athreos should be one of them if its devotion is online, and then he can attack. It's mostly chump blocked or something, or it's coming through because it's indestructible either way. And then you need only 2 more other creatures that are attacking, and then you can use that card. Probably it's a card on the top 4 that you can use to protect your attacking creatures or something. So this is good either way. Also, it's a land that taps for white. Why not? Then we have Vote of the Archangel. Also great. Taps 1 colorless. And you can pay 2 and a black and a white for converted mana cost and tap this land. And then creatures you control gain Death Touch and lifelink until end of turn. Wonderful. You need lifelink to sustain all your pay amount of life abilities you have in this deck. And you need Death Touch because your creatures are so small, and then you can really hand up with. You can block them and trade 1 for 1 with a bunch of assumingly greater, bigger creatures your opponent has. So this is also a wonderful land here to chump block and something, and not really to chump block and chump and destroy that way with the Death Touch ability. And you can also get a bunch of life back because they have lifelink. Always great, all in one. This is a wonderful land, and it doesn't really have that much of a problem because it taps for colorless if it's not really working that much. Then we have the Bazooka Box. Actually, this is awesome in this deck because many of these cards like Patria Spitting affect your opponent's graveyard as well. You do not really want to help your opponent getting cards from their graveyard into play. Naturally not. And this Bazooka Box kind of like helps you. It comes into play tapped, it provides a black mana when tapped, and when it's put into battlefield, then you remove all cards in your opponent's graveyard from the game. This is very good because your opponent needs to recover from that. An empty graveyard is always bad in an EDH game, I guess, most of the time. And many decks do not really can recover from that if they work with their graveyard a lot. So this is wonderful here. It's a wonderful land in this deck for sure. Then we have the Command Tower. Of course, it taps for any mana that your commander has identity of. So it's white and black. It's also sure. It's a land for both colors actually. Then we have the Scrub Land. Of course, that's the dual land. Taps for either black or white. It's a swamp and it's also a plains. So it can be get out, for example, with Tithe, and for anything else. This is the most important card. Keep in mind that this needs to be in the deck. The same as Godless Shrine. It's a shock duel from this side. It's a plains and a swamp. Comes into play tapped unless you pay 2 life. So you can shock it in, put it down. Also great. Then we have the Isolated Chapel. Comes into play tapped unless you control a swamp or a plains. And you can tap it for either white or black mana. Then it's also the Painland, the Curse of Kolios. Then you have the Tainted Fields. Also important to get all your mana going. Concealed Courtyard comes into play tapped unless you control 3 or fewer lands, and then provides you with either one of your colors. Then we have the Temple of Silence, comes into play tapped, taps for white or black, and when it comes into play you scry 1. So you get the fever going, got the scurry, got the insanity. So this is very, very good to have in here. Then we have the Shambling Vent, comes into play tapped, taps for either of your colors, and you can also pay 1 white, 1 black, and 1 colorless. And then it becomes a 2/3 creature that is white and black, and it has also lifelink and is still a land. So a little bit of life gain here. Why not? It's also a great jump blocker or whatever. This is good, especially if your opponent got rid of all your board, all your creatures died, and at last you can use that one to attack. Why not? Awesome card here. Then we have the Order of Basilica. It comes into play tapped. When it comes into play, then you return a land you control to its owner's hand. And then you can tap for white and black all together. 2 mana on this. While this card is in here, you can return a land you control to its owner's hand, which of course is not Order of Basilica. And if you are lucky, you can get a combination. You can get like cards to put into your hand from the battlefield. Like for example, Windsbrick Heights, when you already did use the card that Hideaway with Hideaway ability, then it's empty like that. And you can use it again when it cards return to your hand, and you can play the land again and then Hideaway again. And also the same with the Bazooka Box, for example, you can remove your opponent's graveyard a second time if this card's returning to your hand, and you can put it out again. So this is also great as a utility card here. Then we have a few fetch lands. I do not play any fetch land in here that is possible that searches for either plains or swamps, because you cannot really get it back. It's not a deck that uses cards like Ramunap Excavator or something. So this is not really the combination, but it's for mana fixing, of course. So this marsh flats is sacrificed and pay 1 life and search your deck for any plains or any swamp card, for example, like a scrubland and godless shrine, whatever. This is also good. And another one that I'm currently playing, Bloodstead Mire, searches for a swamp. We don't have mountains in here, sure. And they have Flagstones of Trocare that taps for 1 white mana, and you can also, when it's put into a graveyard from play, you may search your library for a plains card and put that card into play tapped. If you do, shuffle your library. So this will get out, for example, a scrubland or whatever, a godless shrine, or even a basic land if you so desire. And then there are the basic lands, of course. I guess there are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plains and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 swamps. So I have 10 basic lands in this deck. I'm a little surprised. I guess there were less. Alright, so this is basically what the part of the deck is. Then we also have a little bit of a sideboard right there. A few cards that you can possibly touch out if you really need to, if that requires, so you're like a tournament player or something, then you can get 10 cards into your sideboard. We have Kaya, Ghost Assassin, not Kaya, it's Kaya. Very great card. It's a Planeswalker for 2 and a black and a white mana. It's a Planeswalker with 5 loyalty. And you can use 3 awesome abilities. You can pay 0, then exile Kaya Ghost Assassin and up to 1 target creature. Return her or another creature, you can blink whatever you want. Then return that card on the battlefield under its owner's control. At the beginning of the next upkeep step, you lose 2 life. The good thing here is if you return Kaya this way, if you blink Kaya, then she returns to the field with also the same amount of loyalty. So 5 is a starting loyalty, and then she remains having 5 loyalty back again if you keep up using the other abilities, because all other abilities she has minus her abilities here. Minus the number of loyalty counters on Kaya. It says you can put minus 1 loyalty, opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. And the other ability for minus 2 loyalty, that says each opponent discards a card and you draw a card. So this is also like a card advantage card. Drain your opponent time after time. If the board stabilizes but you do not really have the power to go through, this can help you go along. This is very good in this deck for the longer game. Then we have the Pious Evangel. For 2 and a white, it's a 2/2 human cleric. And whenever the Evangel or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. So it's basically Soul Warden, I guess. And you can pay 2 and tap him and sacrifice another permanent. And if you do, you transform Pious Evangel. And if you transform him, then it's Wayward Disciple. And he also has the same ability as a 2/4. And he says, whenever Wayward Disciple or another creature you control dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. This is basically another way for another trigger to search for. If the deck needs it, for example, then you can get more of these triggers out, like a Blood Artist effect. Why not? Always good in this deck. The deck needs it sometimes. And then you have the Soul Collector. For 1, a black and a white mana, it's a 2/1 body that says when it's put into play, you have to look at your opponent's hand, search your opponent's hand for any card that's not a land, and you will remove that card from the game. And your opponent will not recover from this, will not get this card back. It's removed until the end of the game, I guess, because this effect is not replaced, it's removed from the field. Then opponent would get this card back or something. Just not the case. You remove that card and it's gone forever, and you also have the information about your opponent's hand. Why not? Then we have a little bit our specialty here. We have like some clerics that are good against specific colors. It's the Crimson Acolyte for 1 and a white mana. It's a 1/1 cleric. He has protection from red, and you can pay 1 white mana and target creature gains protection from red until end of turn. This is great if you're playing against red, naturally. Not also against burn, but many other cards, they are red, for example dragons or anything, or if your opponent's commander contains red. This is very, very good. You can use it and use many ways to stop your opponent from having threats. You can slip through because it's unblocked when your opponent only has red creatures, and all creatures you control gain that ability of protection from red as well. This is great. And then the same thing, Obsidian Acolyte. It's kind of like the same card for black. For 1 and a white mana, it's a 1/1 creature. It has protection from black, and you can pay 1 white mana each time as often as you like, and target creature you control gains protection from black until end of turn. So this is also a great way to stop your opponent from like having a Dark Banishing or something. You can do it in response naturally. You can also slip through, you can jump block better. It's awesome against black decks, hands down. Wonderful cleric in here. Then we have Albus, the Binding Blade, and also a great artifact, legendary equipment. For 7 mana, it's huge amount of mana, I'd say. But equipped creature gets +1/+0. You can equip it for 1. And when a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, unattach Albus the Binding Blade, then transform it. And that provides you with just another demon. And then you have Withengar Unbound. It's a 13/13 demon with flying, intimidate and trample. And whenever a player loses the game, put 13 +1/+1 counters on Withengar Unbound. So basically, if you're playing not against 101, if you're playing against multiple opponents, this can be an optional choice to get these counters on it. Then it gets even bigger. But anyway, 13/13, flying, trample and intimidate. This is awesome if you get lucky, if you keep it going. So this needs to be in the deck, I guess. It's Church of Athreos style to get this card to one of your parishioners, equip it, and then afterwards you get a big demon. That's exactly what this deck tends to do, I guess. Then we have the Overwhelming Splendor. It's in the sideboard because not many people like to play with this card. But there are cards like Academy Rector that can fetch it out for 6 and 2 white. Otherwise, the converted mana cost, you can put this curse onto a player, and creatures that player controls lose all abilities, and all creatures they control are 1/1 puny little creatures, and opponent player can use any abilities except mana abilities. That's the only thing they can do, and also loyalty abilities do not count for Planeswalkers. But anything else he cannot do, so he's really screwed if he has it onto himself or herself. So this is very important to have that. And also with Academy Rector that can be put out with all the tutors in the deck, it can be a fast game if you put it on the opponent like on turn 4. This is very strong. So many people do not like that. But when you're playing on a tournament, of course use this card. Wonderful in this deck, I'd say. Then we have No Rest for the Wicked, another great card that is not meant to be in the main deck, but probably it's a good idea. That says sacrifice No Rest for the Wicked. Return to your hand all creature cards that put into your graveyard from play this turn. So basically, if your opponent has a mass wipe or something, then you get all your creatures back. They die, all the triggers happen from Blood Artist and so on, and then you can return all creatures back to your hand. Wonderful here. Great card as another combination. Then we have Safe Passage to protect your creatures from like an earthquake or something. You can pay 2 and a white, it's an instant. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to you and creatures you control this turn. So you're safe when your opponent is going to get a big fireball throwing at you, and also all your creatures are safe. For example, if it's a fire spout or something, then you can use that to protect all your parishioners. Always awesome here. And the last card in the deck is Declaration of Stone. It's another great card to support and to destroy and get rid of all opponent's creatures. For 1 and a white, it's a sorcery. Exile target creature and all other creatures its controller controls with the same name as that creature. For example, like 20 tokens that have the same name because they're all the same like insect tokens. Then all cards with the same name are removed from the game. And then that player investigates for each non-land creature exiled this way. And then one card, final card that is not meant to be in the deck. It's Reprocess. I had it in the deck, I tested it for 2 and 2 black. It's a sorcery. Sacrifice any number of artifacts, creatures and or lands and draw a card for each one sacrificed this way. I tested with this card. I know Jolt is playing this card for a long time. Of course you can sacrifice like 3 lands if you do not need them or something. I guess this is not a card I really want to play in this deck. But I will keep that in mind. Probably I will try it out later on. But right now I do not have any kind of space for this. I'm sorry, Reprocess. But anyway, I hope you liked this video, and if you do, please also subscribe to my YouTube channel if you like. I also have Instagram like in 7 days or something. And I posted also a lot of photos of all my cards and something. Not all my cards, but plenty of my cards. If you're interested, just go to Instagram, make an account if you not already have one, and then put in @PowerStaples to get this going. Alright, please consider going to Jolt's account, Jolt539. Please look at his decks as his plays. He's very, very awesome. He's a wonderful player. I love every video he ever made. Wonderful. Please go check it out. Please like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.